Ladies and gentlemen, continuing the interaction with Matthew Sands on my video Matt Sands ANCAP Anarchy NAP Volunteerism 2, Matthew Sands says, "Thank you again for your detailed reply. While you did misunderstand or misrepresent a lot, I did find your video quite funny, even if it was basically just calling me a stupid moron." Good. Matt, I'm glad you have a sense of humor. Now then, I also did an apology to Matt in case he was young and was just starting to get his head around these ideas. I said, just keep going and keep working on it. And he's 38, so apology rescinded. Matt, you're stuck, dude. You're tough, man. You're wrecked, dude. You're wrecked. How come you can't think in principle and you're that fucking old? Are you kidding me? Seeing as you called it officially the stupidest sentence you've ever heard, I will first address my statement that laws are basically the terms of peace. Now, if laws are basically the terms of peace, then drop that three-word phrase and just go for the one-word term. Why would you have three words when you can replace it with one word? What does it clarify to add three words to replace one word with three words? What are you clarifying? He just doesn't like the word law because it's a bad word in his group. Laws are basically the terms of peace. I stand by that assertion. That is what the law essentially is. Well, then why don't you just call it law? The threat of force is attached to every law. It is the terms of peace and the terms of your freedom. Okay, law is freedom. Good, you're getting there. If you break the law, you risk losing both. What, the terms of peace and your freedom? Could you lose just one and not the other? Could you lose the terms of peace but still have freedom? Or could you lose your freedom and still have the terms of peace? What is that stupid phrase, the terms of peace? Will you drop that stupid phrase already? Whether you say that the prohibition against initiating force against others is the law, or whether you say it is the terms of peace, you're essentially saying the same thing. Okay, checkmark, QED, stop saying terms of peace, just say law. Terms of peace is three words that are more confusing than one word, which is law. Just say law. If you violate the law, if you violate the terms of peace, then you are breaking the rules that dictate when you should be left alone or when force can or should be used against you. Okay, if you violate the law, then you're breaking the rules. Why does the law have to mean you're breaking rules? Why can't the law just mean you're breaking the law? Why does the law have to mean you're breaking rules? Are you trying to legitimize it by bringing in the word rules? The law can stand. You don't need to call it rules or terms of peace or some garbage. You could just call it law. I know you can't in your group of malthinkers, but you see, you just sound like garbage when you say this stuff, dude. This is just crap. The law is the terms of peace. It's usually laid out by a ruling authority, like a government or a monarch, but it can also be established as the terms of peace. Law is usually laid out by a ruling authority, like a government, but different from law, or different from being set out by a ruling authority. That's what it is. Law is usually done in this way, but can also be established as the terms of peace. Now we're getting down to your point of what the terms of peace means. So the terms of peace means something that can be laid out like law, but without a government. Okay. The terms of peace is usually laid out by an authority or a government, but can also be established as the terms of peace. The law is usually laid out by an authority, but can also be established as the terms of peace. Now, either the terms of peace means law without government, And what would that be? What would law without government even mean? Boy, you are confused, dude. You need to define what the terms of peace means. You are using it there as a different thing from law. And how it is different from law is that law is laid out by a ruling authority or government, but the terms of peace is different. You separate it with the words can also be. And the word also is your only operative thought in that sentence. Also. You just say, comma, this as well. You don't tell me why or how or what is different about it. So that's really crappy thinking, dude. That sentence is really, really crappy, dude. Come on. I realize the phrase is usually used in the context of peace treaties between warring tribes or nations, but in this case, I want to use it as a vehicle for establishing the NAP as the terms of peace, which is essentially the same as making universal law. So I realize that this terminology is usually used elsewhere, but in this case, I want to use it to make a universal law. Now, how is your universal law from the universal law that we have already, except what? Property taxes? Taxation? Is that the only difference? So why don't you just work to change the taxation system? What's your big to-do about if you're just going to have a universal law that everyone has to follow regardless of whether or not they agree in it, and in this new system you won't have forced taxation, then why don't you just work towards getting rid of forced taxation? What is your big thing with universal law? What is that? To basically recognize self-ownership or self-rule or whatever term you prefer to describe the fact that you have a right over yourself and only yourself. How about freedom? Does freedom work for you? Self-ownership is 2 words. Self-rule is 2 words. Freedom is 1 word. It's a clearer concept. Why can't you use the word freedom? You have a right to yourself and only to yourself. That's freedom. Everyone has that right. That's why you don't have a right to anybody else, because they have freedom too. Freedom is the word you're looking for, dude. Come on. We can live in peace if we respect this basic right of every individual. True, but some people don't, and therefore we have courts and laws and police officers. That's what the NAP is about. Why? Why would you do the NAP? We have police officers and law right now. And that's why the idea is to replace the rule of government. Like I said, this guy is 3 inches from the FBI knocking on his door and saying, "Excuse me, sir, we heard that you are starting an insurrection against the United States government." Now, I wouldn't be fond of that because I don't think he's going to come up with a constitution better than the one we have. With the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. I don't think he's going to come up with anything nearly as good as that. Not with his fucking junk thinking about universal law, non-aggression principle. What is it? With universal law? What was the term? It's so stupid I can't even remember the term. Alright, he says, you seem to be confused about my comment on how many need to agree to this peace agreement. I am talking about how many are needed to establish it as law. Well, I guess what you're going to need is an army bigger than your enemy's army. To actually make this peace agreement a reality instead of some big idea I'm bleeding about. Yes, it applies to everyone, regardless of whether they agree to it. Okay, you're going to need an army bigger than your opponents then. That's how many you'll need. The law against rape stands regardless of whether or not rapists agree to it. The law against theft applies to thieves regardless of their agreement. Who defines thievery? Right? Maybe the thief didn't think he was stealing, and that happens a lot. People go to jail and they say, I'm innocent. I didn't do it. I wasn't stealing. I didn't mean to. It was a mistake. It was an accident. There was no malintent. Right? People go to jail all the time who say they were innocent. Who's going to define thievery? The NAP would apply to all, not just those who agree to this peace agreement. Well, then you've got a government that's going around enforcing its code on people who may or may not agree. You've got that. You are doing that. But without anyone agreeing to it, then it will never be established. So he says, got to get a certain amount of people to agree to it, and then we can force it on everybody. That's what you're saying, right? Once we get a certain minimal number of people, then we can force it on everybody, okay? And your question is just, how many do we need, right? My answer is, you need an army bigger than your opponent's, okay? Let's see, who will enforce it? We can still have police. Oh, really? Did you let your fellow anarchists know that there will still be police in anarchy? But to enforce the NAP does not require special rights or powers. Okay, so you're going to do away with special rights and powers and just have normal rights and powers? The right to enforce the NAP belongs to all. Okay, let me tell you how we already have that, Matthew. We already have the right to enforce. Each one of us individually already currently has the right to enforce the non-aggression principle, okay? It's called the Second Amendment. Okay? The Founding Fathers took care of this. Now, are you Canadian? Is that the problem here? So while it would make more sense to continue to delegate NAP enforcement to a specialized organization like the police, the right to defend yourself and to defend others is a right that belongs to all. Yeah, that's why we have guns and knives in the Second Amendment, okay? All right, Matthew. I didn't clarify anything for you, have I? This is just people laughing at you. That's what's going on here. That's all these videos are.